welcome everyone to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. I'm your host, Bob Kerwin. And today we have another show on the Learning Clinic Meet the Candidates series. In the studio with me today is Dan Melanson, who is running for the position of mayor. Welcome back to the studio, Dan.
Thanks, Bob. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and last time you were in here, you were president of the Greater Sudbury.
Yeah, I'm now the former president of the Greater Sudbury Taxpayers Association and full-time candidate for mayor.
Yeah, so let's kind of start off by saying, okay, Dan Melanson is running for mayor. So for the people who don't know your background, who is this person?
Well, I was born and raised in Sudbury. My parents, my dad worked at Inco. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I went to Sheridan Tech. After that, I worked in the mines for a while. Then got into helicopters. I got an apprenticeship as an aircraft maintenance engineer. Did my 5-year apprenticeship, wrote my license, and eventually worked my way up to being the chief engineer of the third largest helicopter company in Canada. And then I was one of the owners of another company. And about 1999, I formed my own company called Trentech Canada, which is an aviation consulting company where we buy and sell helicopters, do consulting for startups, shutdowns, different things like that. I've been doing that ever since 1999. I also do certified appraisals. And then, of course, the important part to tonight's conversation is in about 3.5 years ago, I formed the Greater Sudbury Taxpayers Association because I was troubled by what I was seeing, what was going on in City Hall at the time. And so we felt that forming a taxpayers association to try and bring some light to the situation and try and bring some accountability to the council of the day would be a good thing to do. So we did that, and we've had a number of issues that I think we've been instrumental in bringing to the forefront.
I guess if you take a look back at the last few years, one thing you can say is there's more awareness of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's, I think it's a combination of things. I think there's been a lot of frustration in the community for the last number of years, and I think people are starting to get active in voicing that. I think also the influence of social media has had a big impact on people speaking out, and I think the formation of the Taxpayer Association has definitely had an influence on bringing more awareness to the general population since it came into being.
And I think that's one of the big things that I've noticed, because I too have grown up in the Sudbury area, spent my entire life, and one of the things was that at certain points, city council was almost like school boards are today, where it was like you were elected, you ran it, everything basically was okay. People had their complaints, but nobody really got involved and nobody took any real, or paid any attention to who was sitting around the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if anything, the last couple of terms, the number of issues that have come up, and they haven't gone away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just that, like you say, a matter of time people are finding out about what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think you have a financial component, and you have a frustration component. I mean, what's happened is as the taxes have continually gone up, and people are saying, like, they're looking at how much they're paying out in taxes, and they're going like, wow, this is really getting, where's this money going? What's happening here? So I think as the tax level has become more factor in people whether they can stay in their homes or not, that's really caused a lot of people to get involved. For example, I mean, I use my house as an example. I built it in 1990 or 91. my tax bill when I first completed the house was $3,100 a year. I don't live on a paved road, I have no street lights, there's no sidewalks, there's no sewer and waters or anything like that, so. My tax bill this year is $8,800. Now, the only difference in the services that I'm getting, excuse me, is that before they actually used to plow the road in the wintertime. Now they don't. I mean, sometimes you're waiting 4 or 5 days before you get the plow to come down for the first time. So services have gone down, taxes have gone up, people have gotten frustrated, and then they started to say, what's wrong with this picture? You know, where is my money going? They started to become more aware of it. So there's that aspect of it. I think a lot of our population in the Sudbury area is elderly. A lot of these people are on fixed incomes. A lot of them are finding it very difficult to try and stay in their homes, especially when their monthly tax bill has basically replaced what they paid for 40 years as a mortgage payment. So they're just finding it very difficult to cope, and that creates a lot of frustration. That motivates people to get out and say something.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a cumulative effect.
Mm-hmm.
So, you decided to run for mayor.
Yep.
I guess the easiest way of going about this is how would your administration change, knowing that you're one of 13, but how?
Well, I mean, the platform that I'm running on really isn't a whole lot different than what I stood for at the GSTA. Accountability, transparency, value for tax dollars spent. I mean, it would appear that almost everybody that's running for the mayor's race has adopted that mantra. So obviously they've been paying attention to the GSDA, and that's fine. I mean, that's what the city needs to move forward. The real question is that I think most people have to ask of the candidates is how are they going to achieve that, and therein lies the rub. I mean. Lots of people can say that they want to change this and change that, or do this, or we need to have more accountability. The question is, how are you going to go about doing it? And that's what everyone's platform should be there for. And we've started to add planks to our platform as to what we would do if we were elected. So far, we've had very good response to what we've come up with so far. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, I've got an announcement up at the airport that at a press conference that we're going to be announcing another plank, and we will be adding more planks as we go along every week or two until the final election. So, obviously there's a lot to cover, and we're trying to do as much research so we're as thoroughly we have all the facts that we can when we launch a plank at that particular time. So, I mean, we've talked about things that could be saved. I mean, 3 years ago, I said, Mr. Natarozny should resign, because I didn't think that he was doing the job that needed to be done, and I still maintain that he should resign. So obviously, one of the first things, if I was elected and I could get the consensus of the council, would be to say, listen, we need to take some changes to the way the city is governed here. We have to make some administrative changes. We have to look at redoing the way Tom Davies is organized right now, and we got to start at the top. So let's start by bringing a new CAO in who has the same ideals and is open to the will of the people with regards to transparency, accountability, and value for money spent, and bring him in and give him his marching orders to start at the top, work to the bottom, and go back up again, and reorganize Tom Davies Square in such a manner that it could be the most cost-effective and efficient municipal corporation in the country.
Yeah, that's a specific.
Well, I mean,
chart. I agree.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. It's we can't do things the way we've been doing them in the past.
No. And to simply stand up and say, oh, well, we're going to change Tom Davies Square, we're going to change what we do. Fine, what are you going to change? You have to change people.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to change direction. That's why we're having an election. I mean, obviously, if you have a new council and a new mayor, you're hoping to get the new direction that you voted for. It's the same thing with the bureaucracy, the upper management bureaucracy at the city. I mean, you can bring in a new council, but if you don't have bureaucracy change, then nothing is going to change. You're going to get the same stonewalling that everybody else got all the way through. So you have to have the bureaucratic element that is in tune with what the mood of the council and the mood of the people is. And so that's what I'm saying. You can't simply say, I'm gonna change something. You have to say, what are you gonna change? You have to start at the upper management levels and work your way down, all the way down.
How are you gonna work with the team that gets elected to get everybody kind of seeing the same vision?
So far, I've met with most of the candidates who are running for ward positions. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them, I've met with them. We've had conversations, we've compared notes on things, and quite frankly, I haven't met any one of them that I couldn't work with, or that we had such philosophical differences that it would have been a problem if they get elected. So I'm not overly concerned about the people that are running. I'll just give you a little background on some of the things that I've done in my 38 years in business in the aviation industry. One of the things that I used to be charged with doing as a senior member of the board was to, when we acquired new companies, which we acquired a number of them in building up our holdings in the helicopter industry, quite often we were taking over companies who were bitter rivals with us for years. And the first guy in the front door after they were taken over was yours truly, and so you're going in and sitting down across from the guys that up until the deal was signed were directly competing back and forth tooth and nail. Now, your position going in is that now we have to bring everybody together onto the same team, pull on the same oar, and make things happen. So I've got lots of experience in doing that, and I've been very successful in doing that. And I'm not, I don't go in and I don't lay down the law. We go in, have a discussion, find out who's got what issues, where are they, such that we can find some common ground and move forward with them, and what can we do to achieve that. I'm not concerned that I won't be able to do that. I think with this, with the new council and the people who are running, I think I'll be able to build a consensus that will enable us to make the changes and move the city forward quite nicely.
So this whole attitude of having healthy debate on issues and then making a decision moving forward, I guess that's a necessity.
Well,
It's-
I mean, how can you make an informed decision if you haven't got a good, healthy debate that takes place? Now, that having been said, it's incumbent upon the people who are having the debate to actually have some knowledge of that to which they're debating. So, you know, I mean, you should show up at a council meeting having been properly briefed and read all of the stuff that you've got. I mean, when you sit at council meetings, as I have for the last 3 or 4 years, and you see questions being asked by councilors, when you're looking at the document that's sitting in front of them and the answer's on the very first page, it tells you that they haven't read anything. So they haven't prepared. So how can you actually have an informed discussion with someone who's not bothering to get informed? Yes, I understand there's lots to read and there's lots to do, but that's part of the job. If you're not prepared to do that, then perhaps you shouldn't have run for the office.
Right, and I think that's huge. I mean, when you look at most council meetings now, if you look on the agenda, the number of pages and pages of reports and the number of reports each council meeting. I mean, if you haven't read in advance all of those reports, the things just escape. And I've told so many people, and we've gone through a few of them in the last little while. I said, you know, you got a 174-page report, and it's page 152 that's got the problem.
Yeah.
If you're not reading and you don't know what you're reading, you miss page 152. And
Yeah.
2 years later, you're told, well, you approved it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
You approved it, you passed it.
Well, you know, and you know, I think reports are replacing debate. I mean, quite frankly, I think the answer is, let's defer it or let's get a report on it, and then we get the report and we'll defer that so that we can think about it some more, and then maybe defer that again, I don't know. But I mean, it's painful and difficult to sit there and watch the stuff that goes on and the number of delays and things that are put off again and again and again, and quite frankly, I don't see how that could possibly be productive.
Your business background and the background you've got, I mean, decisions have to be made, or you're gonna miss opportunities.
Well, and you have an obligation to be totally informed when you're making that decision. And it appears that the vast majority of what we've seen from our council in the past has been that most of them really would defer to a report or defer to someone else telling them what it is that they should be thinking, as opposed to getting out there and doing their own research. I mean, why is it that you have to have the staff do a report for you and that's the gospel? Whatever happened to you doing some of the research yourself and coming up with it? Well, so that when the staff comes with a report, they say, well, this is this and that's that. And you say, well, yeah, well, what about this? You don't mention this in there. Well, that's a valid question to be asking staff. Why didn't you include this, or is this not valid, or is this something that you didn't include for what reason? I mean, it goes back to when I launched my campaign at a couple months back. I said, the why question. Nobody asks why anymore. Everybody just takes what they're given at face value, and then when I say, why is it that we're doing it this way? Why do we have to get a report on that? Why don't you know what this is all about?
Yeah. Now, how do we build that into the culture on the council? Is there a way of, you can't force people to come prepared, because it's a democratic process.
Well, I think you can motivate them to want to be productive at the meetings. And I think part of the way you do that is that you run those meetings as you would any other board meeting. Because as far as I'm concerned, all of the council meeting is a board meeting.
That's it.
You got a board of directors or you got councilors. You got a board chair or you have a mayor.
$500 million
Corporation. So when you go to a board meeting, you're expected to show up with a certain level of knowledge in order you to be a part of those discussions to be productive. I think that expectation has gotten lost along the way, and it needs to be reinstilled. And I think if people who are members of council are at these council meetings, if they know that they're going to be challenged by the board, and they're going to say, listen, I'm going to ask you a direct question. It's not just coming from other, if somebody's asking a question and it's not on topic, they should be challenged on that. And if you challenge them on that, the next time they'll come back, they'll be prepared.
That's right.
Because they don't want to be embarrassed. I mean, you want them to be prepared, you want them to show up, you want them to be active participants and productive participants. But in order to do that, they have to do their homework.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done your homework, then it goes back to this transparency and accountability. Well, if you haven't done your homework, and you haven't read the stuff that you're supposed to read, and you show up at a council meeting, there should be some accountability. Right now there isn't. It just gets fluffed over and everybody else. I think you should be able to call people to task for not doing their job.
No, I think you're right. It's going to be an interesting, we have to. I don't think it's a matter of, this is what.
There is no alternative. I mean, if you want to have a productive council, if you want to do things forward, guess what? This is your job.
Yeah. We can't spend another 4 years.
No, this is your job to be informed.
Yeah, the time has come. So in your discussions, and you have an awful lot of opportunity to network and connect with people who are very knowledgeable about some of the issues. Are there any that are in a class? I don't like identifying what's the top, what's second, but is there a class A issues that have to be dealt with first? Obviously the transparency, the accountability, all that. But after that, is there anything that?
Well, I mean, you know, I don't think it's one before, I think it's a full frontal movement. I mean, you have to look at the financial, situation in conjunction with,
So they're all
with everything else
they're all
going forward.
interconnected.
Yeah, they're all, I mean, I don't think you can pick this one and say, well, we're gonna fix this, and then we're gonna fix that over there. I think it's gotta be a broad spectrum, and again, it goes back to saying, the council saying to the new CAO, listen, here's our direction to you. We want efficiency, we want accountability, we want value for our money. That's your marching orders. You tell us what you need from us as a council in order to achieve those goals, and we'll provide you the tools. In the meantime, you get to work on redoing everything so that there's a reorganization that falls in line with the mandate that council has given you. And he says, yes, sir, you've given him his marching orders. Now it's council's duty and obligation to ensure that and follow up, to ensure that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, and to give him the resources that he needs to do what needs to be done. In the past, it's been very easy. I mean, people say, oh, well, we should do this, you know, okay, well, pass a resolution, and then nobody follows through on anything. You know, yeah, okay, well, whatever, you know.
I guess
That's how your transit scandal kept escalating out of control, because there was nobody that actually followed up on anything, and nobody was held accountable. That's council's responsibility to make sure that the people who are charged with doing the administration of our city and our resources have what they need to do their job, and that they're doing their job. And if they're not, it's not just that individual's fault, it's council's fault because they haven't followed up.
That's right. That's right. So it's really an awareness level that has to be increased at council too. Like we're gonna have to make sure that council is on top of things.
Oh, absolutely, and that is one of the big things. Council has to start getting back involved in the actual operation of the city through the CAO's office. In the past, we've just sort of, okay, well, you pass this bylaw, pass that resolution, and okay, well, what's happening? Oh, okay, well, that's fine, you know. Nobody's followed through. I don't believe that there's been any follow through for quite some time, and I think that's what we need to do is to make sure that those that we're saying should be administering the city are doing it, and are doing it properly, and are doing it in accordance with the will of council.
So what happened over like where did this transition cross over? Because I can remember, and I don't wanna get into before amalgamation, but I remember in the days when Tom Davies was chair of the regional council, and Jean Robert and Jim Griffin went to regional council for the valley.
Yep.
They brought up issues that were definitely sore points with
Sure.
the valley. And obviously their concerns were for the valley, just like everybody else was concerned with their own particular areas. Now, at that point, it was hard for anything to get by anybody because everybody was really complaining and saying, look, we're not happy with this, correct it. Tom Davies did a marvelous job
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
coaching this team.
Great guy.
So where did we pass over to the point of, well, we'll just turn it over and we don't care? Because you're right, we seem to have gone, the pendulum has really swung.
Yeah, you know, that's very difficult to say what the watershed moment was that caused that shift in thinking, but I think it probably runs parallel to an overall malaise that has taken over or overcome most of our society with regards to, well, you know what, you know, it doesn't matter who's in power, they all do the same thing anyway, so it doesn't matter who you vote, you know what, I'm not even gonna bother voting because it doesn't make any difference. And like, I remember back in when I was a kid growing up, okay, my parents were not rich people, but they were working people, but they made a point of voting in every election that came up. And being raised in that household, I couldn't wait to be old enough to vote because when you got to vote, that meant you had something to say. And now, what I find really troubling is the number of people, not in their teens, not in their 20s, not even in their 30s, who say, you know what, I've never voted. And I think that in a nutshell tells us what the biggest single problem is with regards to this, the type and the level and the quality of government that we're getting at this particular point in time. And I think it's time that we have to start changing that around, changing that dynamic around, so that people actually understand that a lot of people died in wars so that you could have the right to vote. And to casually blow it off because nobody, you know, the guy I went for didn't win. Guess what? That's not the point. The point is to exercise your franchise and to show that you are part of the democracy and get out and vote. And that's a big thing. And that's, I think when that started going, lessening in importance to people, that's when we started getting the kind of governments that we've got now.
It's at all levels of governments, but I agree with you. I can remember back when the Valley, I'll use the Valley, when the Valley had 6 councillors.
Yep.
You knew them. You went walking around the street at the playground and you
Sure.
bumped into them. You didn't had to know them.
Mhm.
We don't know our leaders
Mhm.
anymore, other than what is reported in the paper. And when we take a look at what, there's over 60 people that are gonna be putting up signs all over the Sudbury area
Yeah.
before long.
Yeah.
Is some of it, this isn't an excuse for people not voting, but is some of it because people just don't know who to vote for?
Well, you know, there always is and always has been a problem with uninformed voters. Obviously, the best thing for a healthy democracy is an informed voter that knows the issues and has taken the time to get some firsthand knowledge on what the platform is of the people who are running, and make an informed decision on that. In this day and age, you would think with all of the access to information that we have, you would think that would be easier rather than more difficult. But I think perhaps by virtue of the fact that there is so much access to so much information that it becomes overwhelming to some people and they just zone out. So the question is, how do you try and get the pertinent information to the people who are going to be out there voting? In the past, it was with signs, it was door knocking, and it was with flyers. Now we're talking Facebook, Twitter, you know, websites, and signs and door knocking and whatnot. So there's a lot more that's happening. I'd like to think that, you know, this election will have a bigger turnout. It will have more people that are going to be voting from an informed point of view, just because for the last few years we've been trying to make taxpayers more aware of how important municipal governance is in their day-to-day lives. I mean, municipal government is the one level of government which has the greatest influence on you as a citizen of this country on a day-to-day basis, much more so than the provincial or the federal governments.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, almost every aspect of what you're doing here in town today is governed by the municipal government. So, you know, you need to get involved. You gotta I guess we have to make it, get the point across to people that you have to vote. If you really want to see something change, you do have to vote. And you really need to do it with a good understanding of who you're voting for and what you're voting for.
A person like yourself, for example, you've been campaigning for years before you registered, because it hasn't been officially campaigned. Even myself, I've told people that said, well, when did you decide? Well, you know what, I've been campaigning for 40 years.
Yeah.
Like, I have been living.
Sure.
And so that is, it's not, let me tell you what I'm going to do, it's, well, look at what I've done.
Yeah.
And now this is what I'm going
Well,
to do.
that led up to the point to make that decision to run.
Yeah, so
Quite frankly, if I hadn't have started up the GSTA and formed that, there's no way that I would be running today, quite frankly. It wouldn't be that. It was a result of getting involved in those issues and really getting immersed in them that I said, you know, like,
So you see solution.
I see solutions. I mean, I see ways that